Welcome to today's episode. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do a product review. But what could I review? Well, I've done many of these type of activities, the small group tours. And if you're a person that hates the logistics of planning a holiday, want to do a holiday where you get to interact with other people with similar interests, maybe this is something that you should explore. I'll dig into transportation, accommodation, group dynamics, and some handy tips to save money. Let's get into it. So I'm going to base this review around two different tour companies that I've used in the past, G Adventures and Intrepid. They're quite well known, but you may have similar companies that would offer a similar experience, which they kind of standardize their services. So it's probably a lot that would be applicable in your case. So first cab off the rank is accommodation. So there's different style of tours, and the accommodation basically fits into the style of tour. So you'll have your active tours where it's camping to keep the costs low. And then you'll have your classic type tours where the accommodation is hotel based. Do note that you can pay for a single supplement, but you do have to share in these type of tours. It helps them keep the cost down, which is understandable. Then you have your more deluxe or your upgraded accommodation. So it'll be tours like in the case of G Adventures, their National Geographic and their Deluxe edition, where it's that upgraded accommodation. That's not really my style because I'm just there for the experience. And as long as the accommodation is clean, relatively comfortable, or in the case of camping, I can save $1 or $2. Oh, and I should also note that I've never done a 18 to 30 something tour, but they have the hostel type accommodation. So if you really want to save some coin, but you don't want to do the camping, then there's that style of tour. But please note that each style of tour attracts a certain crowd. It doesn't guarantee you'll get that type of person, but more likely than not, you will. So it's just something to take into consideration. So for example, if you're going to do the active tour, you're generally going to find that most people on the tour, if they've read the itinerary, are going to be active people. The classics tend to get people who are less active, generally an older crowd, basically because those tours start to increase in price, and then the upper echelon of the tours, I find they don't actually appeal to me, given that they generally have not that active. They will attract those who are quite well off, who are looking for a high class of accommodation and still get an experience of the area. I'm not there for the accommodation, so I generally go for the lower cost tours that still offer, in my opinion, they offer more experiences than some of the other tours, but that's your call, and you can check it out. So let's move on to transportation. So generally with these tours, they'll range from like 7 days to maybe 21 days, with 14 days normally being the ideal time that I look for in a tour. And you normally cover a lot of ground. So they'll generally use vans, so like a 15, 16 type seater, around that kind, rather than the big bus, which can be a tight fit. Do note that in a group that size, you are likely to run into a few individuals who are I get car sick, I need to sit up at the front. So they normally have policies where they can rotate people through, because people generally find a seat that they want to sit in, and if they're not told to rotate through, they'll just keep sitting day after day. With these tours, if you see two tours that look like they're very similar but have a a definite distinction in how much they cost, it may be the replacement of a long road trip component versus a flight. That generally may be the price distinction that you're noticing. So that's one thing to take note. And make sure you read the itineraries, because they're not going to highlight those long road trips. So it's clearly stated in the itineraries of these types of tours. So if you read it, you'll know what's ahead of you. Because I feel some of the tours spend too long on the road trying to cover too much, and just make sure you vet that, because otherwise, sure, everyone wants to see the countryside in the back of a van, but doing it 14 days straight and too much of it on the road, not actually out there enjoying it, you may not get the experience that you want. So that's something to look out for. So when I first started going on holidays, I used to go with my family, but after a few holidays, well, that was no longer an option. It was obviously them, not me. I don't think they'll see this because we're this far into the video. It probably tuned out by now. So, group dynamics. It's interesting because every tour is different. You're going to get the people that you click with, that you're compatible with, and that you enjoy their company. You're also going to find that there are people in the tour that you don't resonate with, and that's okay. I haven't had any major issues in any of the tours that I've done. I've done, well, with these two companies, about 10 of these type tours. So you'll get a mixed bag. And I guess over time, I've become more of that peacemaker, which they may disagree with, those people that have been on the tour and happen to see this video. But overall, I've got no real complaints. And it's just, I think it adds to the experience. Enjoying these different countries with like-minded people who share similar experiences or maybe different experiences, and doing it in that group environment. I could easily do these tours myself. Yes, it is a pain to have to organise the administration or logistics components of these holidays. But I think the bit that attracts me the most to these type of holidays, besides that, is the different group dynamics and the people you meet along the way. So if you've never done this type of tour, I'd definitely consider it, just on that. So on to what they call the CEO, essentially the tour guide. In my personal experience, I've never had any issues. I generally find that the type of person that's attracted to that position is someone who wants to help. And I've never come across someone who hasn't had that mindset. So I'm sure there are people in that industry that aren't that helpful and that aren't that good, but in the 10 odd tours that I've done, I've never run into that type of individual. So maybe I've just been lucky, but so far so good. So now onto the most important part, how to save money. This is an area that I specialize in. These type of tours are constantly on sale, from cyber sales to Christmas, New Year sales, mid-year sales, and they'll even put individual tours on sale if they haven't got enough numbers. They must run an algorithm where once they hit a certain time prior to the tour, if they don't have the numbers that they need, that they start to discount it. So you'll always find something on sale, which it makes sense for them, because this type of tour, when you think about it, the marginal cost of an additional person is very low. For example, if they have an odd number of people of one gender in the tour, getting another male, for example, will mean that they won't need to book an additional hotel room. Their transportation costs are fixed costs. So having 8 versus 15 people makes no difference. If a tour offers food, there's the marginal cost of an additional person, which generally is quite low. So it makes sense for them to put these types of tours on sale, given the fixed costs they face and then the slight additional marginal costs per person. So if it's something to look out for, me personally, I will look at a few areas that I'm interested in, and then I'll just watch the sales. So generally you'll see sales of 20, 30, if you're really lucky, maybe like 40%. So if you keep your eyes open, put the time in, you'll likely find something attractive that meets your needs. So here's another tip that I stumbled upon just by accident on how you can save some additional money. The only caveat is that you would need to be able to transact in multiple currencies. So in my circumstances, I pay for holidays in AUD, Australian dollars, but given that I'm currently in the US, I set up a US bank account. So I thought one of my previous tours, I was like, well, I'll pay for it in US dollars. But then when I stumbled on the site, I realized that they actually price discriminated, and it must have been because Australia was so far from the location of the tour that they had subsidized the price of that tour, so it was more expensive, even after the currency conversion, to pay in US dollars rather than Australian dollars. So I'll show you an example of this. If this works in your case, you're going to have to factor into the possibility of foreign transaction fees and the like. So it may not work for you, but if you can transact without those fees, this may be a find for you that could save you hundreds of dollars potentially. Have a look. So let's get into an example. Here I'm on the G Adventures website. I've got the South America Discovery Lima to Rio de Janeiro tour. It's a 38-day tour from 12,149 Australian dollars. Quite pricey, but it's a long tour. Something that's generally normally out of my time frame, given just how many days that is. So if I scroll down to the bottom, I can, probably should have picked a different tour so I didn't have to scroll so much, but anyway, go to the bottom and I'll change that from Australia and I'll select the US. And that's 9,499 US dollars. Type that in. That actually equates to 14,827 Australian dollars. And as you could see previously, it was only 12,000 Australian dollars, well, in excess of 12,000 Australian. So that's probably an extreme example of this, but you're going to find that type of price discrimination throughout. And it's probably not unique to G Adventures. I'm sure a lot of companies do it, given how easy it is to get from the US to South America versus trying to get to South America from Australia and the costs associated with that. So there's a handy tip for you. Keep that in mind next time you're booking a tour. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for further videos. Hit that subscribe button. And here to get those numbers up. If you've lasted this long, you must have enjoyed it. Catch you later. See you next time.